guys, City Walk, City Wall here, and welcome back to Kobayashi Island. This episode we're going to be focusing pretty much exclusively on the cargo part of the airport, which is really massive, and I just wanted to start off here by showing you what downtown Kobayashi looked like before the cargo airport got built. As you can tell, there's a lot of businesses complaining about not having enough goods to sell. Pretty much every single one. So by the end of the episode, this will all pretty much be fixed, and there'll be a ton more cars and trucks coming into downtown. All these complaints will be gone, which I'm really excited about. And at the very end of the episode, we'll come back to downtown and I'll show you just how much of a difference it made. Anyways, let's get into the episode. The first thing I did here to start off building this area was extend out the highway that goes under the airport loop out to two different exits in the empty area beyond the main terminal, where the freeway there kind of dead ends. This area is going to have a ton of traffic, definitely more than the harbor currently has, since the harbor isn't really doing much importing and exporting these days. So on one of these exits, I put a roundabout, and the other one I used the traffic manager mod to give the on-ramps and off-ramps priority over the road that intersects, so that trucks could really easily get on and off the freeway here. I'm ashamed to admit it, maybe you've noticed, but detailing roads and intersections with decals and stuff is pretty much the single thing that I'm worst at in City Skylines. And it's kind of embarrassing, but at the end of the episode I did some bonus material or something, and it was more of an exercise for myself to try and get better. I attempted some road markings on this roundabout that I just placed down, and I locked off the camera, and I'm just gonna play the entire thing out, no cuts, no commentary. Just a bit of, video for you guys to watch and laugh at me, because, you could make something better, or, just skip and not watch. It's pretty terrible, but it is kind of satisfying to watch, I think. So, I don't know. I left it in there for you guys. The concept behind this area is really where most of the importing and exporting on the island happens. So I'm going to have a lot of warehouses here to store goods, but it actually turns out that the main thing that these warehouses do is provide trucks to deliver the goods. I have every single warehouse here, and I made a lot, like 10 or 15 at least, big ones too. They're all set to be storing commercial goods only. So they request commercial goods from the edge of the map. Airplanes are summoned and import the goods and deliver them to the warehouses, and then the warehouses spawn a ton of trucks and deliver goods to all the different businesses on the island. So I placed the first one down here. It's the biggest one possible, and immediately it was using all 20 of its available trucks, like right off the bat. So I realized, there's definitely a need for these warehouses. The city needs the trucks. So I just started placing them down all over this area as much as I could. And I thought I was going to keep placing them down until eventually they weren't using every single truck. But I ended up placing them down until I actually just ran out of room in this area entirely. There's, like I said, 15, 20 warehouses, and they're all using every single one of their trucks at the end of the episode, which is pretty awesome. So I think more than anything else, these warehouses are what solved the problem of importing goods to Kobayashi Island, and I think the reason for that is because when you play the game with the highway that connects from the edge of the map to your city, unlike what's going on here in Kobayashi Island, the edge of the map has the ability to spawn a bunch of extra trucks that say they're from a different city or something, and I'm going to venture a guess that cargo airports and harbors can't really spawn a comparable amount of trucks as the edge of the map can. And so with a ton of these commercial goods warehouses, I have the ability to spawn like 200 or 300 additional trucks here, and that really just helps get goods to the businesses on the island. Right now you're seeing me make sort of a parking lot for the front part of these trucks, like for when they drop off their trailer at a warehouse to be unloaded and then they need a place to go and wait and park. A lot of the stuff I built here in this area that wasn't related to warehouses was truck stuff. So there's a truck parking lot here. There's a truck car wash that I built right next door. And there's another truck parking lot later on too. So I did something here that I really liked as well. I've always not really been a fan of the way it looks when you connect up one of these larger parking lot roads to another road, sort of at a perpendicular angle. It makes like this massive intersection that feels really unrealistic. So what I did here was I put a fence and some decals like through the middle of the intersection and just kind of made like a tiny regular sized road opening in the fence, like a gate where you could drive through in and out of the parking lot. I'm not sure if this is perfect, but it definitely is a lot better than what was here before, just like a giant empty intersection. So I think that's a strategy I'm going to continue to use here and there. You're seeing me right now finish up this truck car wash, do a little waiting area. I also put down the second to last available unique factory that I have here in the cargo airport area. It's the lemonade factory, you're seeing it right now. And in my opinion, this is the worst of all the factories because it's huge, it's really, really big, but it produces less goods than almost every single other factory. But I thought since this place is pretty much the last big open area on the island that I could waste a little space and put it down here. It does fit with the other warehouses pretty well, visually at least. I also put down, you'll see it shortly, I'm not really sure where this is from. I think it's vanilla or from a DLC maybe. It's an electric car factory, which to me it looks nothing like an electric car factory, but it does fit this area really well with this sort of circular tower that it has. It actually functions as a park, which is kind of odd considering the way it looks, but I realized that I actually do need this area to have somewhat good land value. I end up placing quite a good amount of commercial buildings out here because there's a few commercial models, commercial buildings. I think they're, for the most part, vanilla buildings that clip together really well with the warehouses. I was sort of attempting to make it look like these warehouses sort of had like a front office or a place where if you needed to go do business there and you weren't in a truck, you were kind of like making a deal with the warehouse or something like that, you know, you would go walk in through the front area and meet with someone in an office. And those are all commercial buildings, obviously, so they require a certain amount of land value. So this park, this electric car factory that you're seeing me detail up now, did help with that. It raised the land value. And I also went through at some point and put a good amount of boom crowd generators inside some of the warehouses. And that was partially, you know, raise the land value, and also partially to fill all these parking lots that I've been kind of making throughout, which were all pretty much empty. You're seeing me now make more of like an employee parking lot for the airport. This is, I'm imagining if you work in the airport, this is where you would park. So this one is kind of an exception to that. I didn't really place any crowd generators around this one. I filled this with prop cars instead. But sort of throughout where these warehouses are was where I was really doing that and raising the land value up. So you just saw me mess around a bunch with the layout of the airplane taxiways and parked cargo planes and the warehouses and hangars around them, kind of make sure that there was enough room for it all. I ended up making this area much wider than I had initially intended because I just ended up needing more and more room as time went on. I'm basing this whole area around a part of LAX airport in Los Angeles that I found on Google Maps, where warehouses are sort of in a U shape around a taxiway where planes can kind of pull into the area and are just surrounded by different warehouses and places to park and unload their goods. And I wanted to do kind of a combination of that, where it's like only warehouses and outdoor areas and also hangars, because I have a couple really awesome hangar assets that I wanted to use, and I wanted to have that kind of be part of the look and feel of this area too. So you just saw me right before this also work on one of these hangars, the first one, which is one of the places that has a functional cargo gate attached to it. I have 3 cargo gates in total. The cargo plane pulls up into the hangar, unloads goods there, and then trucks spawn on the parking lot road. I use some of the vanilla industrial buildings to kind of make rows of spots where trucks could pull up and back up into the hangar and get goods loaded up into them. And I also put another little tiny warehouse there. I think about this time I realized that the super large warehouses, the biggest ones possible, are actually kind of inefficient. They only spawn 20 trucks and they take up the amount of room as like 3 of the next size down warehouses, and those spawn like 15 trucks. So you can get a lot more trucks in a smaller amount of space if you use smaller warehouses. So even though they're pretty cool looking, I did leave a few. After this point, I started placing down a lot more smaller warehouses in an effort to get more trucks in a smaller amount of space. What you're seeing me do right now, I'm about to start making sort of a oil terminal, like an airplane fuel terminal. That's a little bit of an extension of the harbor, where boats can't actually pull up here, but sort of visually speaking, and not practically speaking, this is where airplanes would get their fuel from. Like a big tanker ship would pull up here and unload fuel, and all of the fuel trucks that are doing laps around the airport would pull into here and fill up and then go back over to the airport. It's not the most detailed area, but I do feel like it's a pretty common thing at airports to have areas where a lot of fuel is stored. So that's sort of what I was going for here. So I just wanted to talk a bit about the future of this series. I'm a little burned out from doing this airport. It's taken me like almost a month of working in the same place, which has been a little crazy. I feel like I sort of need, some sort of pick-me-up, or I don't know. I just wanted to, I said I wanted to save the downtown for last, but I'm feeling like maybe I should go back over there and do some fun downtown work before heading back and finishing up some of the odds and ends around the island, the rural areas in here. Maybe I won't do all the downtown at once, but I think for the time being, I'm gonna head back over there, do some fun things, fix up some issues that I've been having, just kind of looking at downtown over the past however long it's been since I worked there. One of the things that I want to do in the downtown is redo a good portion of Kobayashi Crossing, the big 5-way intersection that's right in the middle. I'm not happy with the way that the buildings look around there. Wanted to add a bunch more billboards and details, and I definitely wanted to totally redo the intersection and the decals on the roads that make up the intersection. I think I can do a lot better than what's there currently, and so that'll be one of my first goals. A custom billboard that I made is also going to go up there, so that'll be released on the workshop at some point leading up to that. I also want to finish out the train lines in downtown, get like solidified places for the last train stations and where the lines are going to be, and get the rail lines on the island totally complete and running with the final numbers of trains on each lines, the types of trains on each lines, and same goes for the buses. I'm bouncing around here a little bit and working back at the lemonade factory and the warehouse that's next to it, detailing them both up with some parked trucks and fences and things. The lemonade factory, I did a cool thing, I think. I was noticing how the recycling center building that I think it's from the workshop, but it's a very common one on the workshop. That building and the lemonade factory have very similar roofs. And at the time I was having an issue getting trash picked up around here in this cargo area because the closest trash center is the recycling center that's near Old Town. So I put this down here in the back of the lemonade factory and covered up the entire entrance and open area of that recycling building with a ton of these pallets. You're seeing me do it now. They're the same pallets that are sitting around the lemonade factory. I'm assuming it's like cases of lemonade or empty bottles or something. So I put big stacks of them all over the front of this recycling center, kind of cover up all the recycling themed things that are inside. And I think that turned out really cool. This next little area is the first place where I realized that putting down a bunch of little warehouses is going to be more efficient than putting down big ones. So there's like 4 or 5 smaller warehouses that are here and make up this big building. They're all clipped together. I was thinking that this building would be maybe more of like a showroom that was kind of more open to the public, or maybe like an airplane or aviation company where they care about the appearance of the building. Just something that was like a bit nicer. They cared about how it looked, and they needed a bigger, nicer parking lot than your average warehouse. So there's a lot of glass entrance buildings around the side of it. The commercial buildings, lots of parking lots, nice entranceways with tiling on the floor, and just a couple spots for trucks to pull up and unload. These entrance buildings were sort of the main ones that started complaining about land value. So later on, you'll see a lot of crowd generators, which, are sort of like little parks and raise the land value, go into this warehouse as well. This is one of the main places I put them, just because I wanted to help, obviously, with the land value, and the parking lots were completely empty, and I wanted them to fill up a bit. So a lot of people come and park here now too. On this little corner here, this little triangle shaped area, put a little diner. I feel like that's a pretty standard thing you'd see in sort of a warehouse industrial area like this. Just like one restaurant that's maybe a staple for the area, and all the truckers and warehouse employees and airport employees visit. Maybe it's a bar in some places, maybe like a strip club, but here it's a diner, little parking lot, some trees around it. And then after that, I put down another truck parking lot. Not a lot went into this, just a big empty concrete area with a fence and a guard hut in the corner, some parked trucks. And for the next little while here, I just start working my way around the sides of this U-shaped area with hangars and warehouses that back right up to the airplane taxiways. Each one has its own kind of road on either side. So the first one here, which is next to this area that I made a bit earlier, that's like a parking lot or parking area for the airport vehicles. This first spot it's a big warehouse, which I also made sort of an entranceway for. There's this funny little commercial vanilla building as the entrance. You just saw me place it down. I think it's like a pancake house or something, restaurant maybe. I thought I would never be able to use that building in Kobayashi Island, but here we are putting it in an industrial area of all places. It has this little patio in front. Maybe you sit out there while you're waiting for someone to come let you in or something. Maybe you take a smoke break outside if you're an employee. And then most of the rest of the outside of the building is just for trucks to park and back up into different parts of the front. It's weird, my game actually broke when I was doing this exact thing right here. I think I copied one of these trucks and placed it down using the Move It mod while the game was just finishing up an autosave. And then it started giving me all these errors. I couldn't find the thing that I had placed down, but I closed the game, opened it back up, and the autosave was perfectly fine. So I literally lost no work. It was one of the more lucky error experiences I've ever had, I would say. The last part of this side of the U, it's all one big thing, one big shipping company that takes up a huge area. The first part of it is a pair of hangars that are connected to a number of warehouses and some storefront kind of office buildings, sort of like the main area with the offices and the indoor storage. And then next to that is a parking lot and an area where another plane can pull up and park outdoors. And then there's a road from there to a spot with a bunch of shipping containers where trucks can drive up and get containers loaded on or off, the back of the truck. So sort of like a really big airplane shipping area. It's got 3 hangars. There's a third one beyond the truck area that you're seeing me starting to place down now. 4 places for planes to park and a really big facility and all the things you'd need to get cargo, off of a plane into a larger container and then the container onto a truck. This is also one of the areas that has a functioning cargo gate. It's inside of that first hangar, and it gets pretty busy around here as a result. A lot of trucks. I really like the way that this turns out. I feel like this area feels particularly real to me. I did this awesome thing similar to enlarging the Honda sign in the Honda Factory episode, where I took a billboard. It's one of the sort of Japanese roof signs that I have, and I scaled it up really big using the procedural objects mod in order to fit onto the side of 2 of these hangars here. I think it's pretty iconic looking, and a lot of airports sort of do that. They have really big hangars, and the hangars have huge floor-to-ceiling signs with the company name on it. So I think that ended up looking pretty cool. So this very last warehouse area on the opposite side of the U, the first part is just another warehouse. I did a similar thing with a few commercial buildings in front and an entranceway, and then next to it I put down the Semiconductor Plant, which is similar to the electric car factory from earlier. It's technically a park. It's also part of the base game. It's not from the workshop, and I thought it fit really, really well into this area because the backside of it looks a lot like little hangars or something, similar to the two giant hangars that are right next to it. These hangars, really big ones next to the Semiconductor Plant, they're definitely from the workshop. They're also so big I was able to clip a few buildings inside of them, some industrial buildings and a big commercial building that are kind of just peeking out sort of towards this parking area. What was cool about this area was I kind of wanted to prove a point to myself. You know, I don't use the surface painter mod anymore. It kind of was a huge pain and I had to redo my surfaces all over the island a number of times. It took me hours and hours. And I've been using these surface assets that you plop down like invisible buildings instead. So I wanted to see what would happen if I just didn't place any down until the very, very end of the build, and kind of waited to see how much surface painting I even needed to do once everything else was in place. And it was kind of cool. It was actually practically none. I put down, I think, 2 1x1 little pieces of surface painting just to cover up tiny little bits of grass that were sticking through. And it really goes to show it's not much surface painting that you have to do in a city usually. It's just that I usually end up doing it early on in the process and it ends up being all over the place, and by the end it's in places that you didn't even need because they got covered up by something else. So kind of goes to show like how much do you really need of these assets. Like maybe not that many. You just saw I put down a ton of these huge company name billboards all over different buildings in this airport area. I found these really great sign assets that are just lettering and logos, no backing. And I also found a ton of other really awesome billboards and sign assets. So I'm planning on using them a bunch in the downtown, really going through and placing them all throughout areas that I've already built, but just to kind of go and add more character throughout. I'm also thinking maybe some electrical posts and things like that. So it was really awesome being able to find these assets and use them here as well in this airport area. The very last thing that I did this episode, besides put down those crowd generators, which you just saw, is fill in this area in the middle of the U. First thing that I did when I went back to finish this up was I messed around with this container area. I put some props here and a parked airplane and used PO to scale up the airplane. I think the coolest thing that happened here was earlier when I went back and was building the lemonade plant, I realized this cool thing, you can use the ruined concrete decals to do a really good job covering up the transition between ploppable concrete and ploppable asphalt, those two sort of textures. They usually have like a harsh straight line. So what I did was I placed down a bunch of asphalt underneath these 3 parked planes, and then I used those same decals all around the edge of it to sort of look like there was a different type of older concrete there or something, and there was like a transition where the concrete was nice in one area and then became more cracked and turned into worse concrete. So that area I'm imagining is sort of like a budget shipping area, maybe, much less organized, worse operation. They don't really have the same sort of, budgets to fix up the pavement where the airplanes go. And then the very last thing was I went through and put some decals all over the tarmac and taxiways. Some crack decals, some yellow lines to kind of denote, where the planes are supposed to go. So that's about it for this kind of building here. This episode, like I said, was very exciting for me because it's the first time in the history of Kobayashi Island that I was able to get rid of all the complaints from the commercial buildings about not having enough goods to sell. It's really been the one thing I've just been harping on over and over in almost every episode. The island doesn't have an outside connection, so we got to do all this crazy stuff. And so it's crazy. It's finally hopefully been solved, and hopefully the issue won't come back when I continue building downtown and putting more commercial buildings in. If that's the case, I don't know, we might have to expand this airport a little bit more, make even more warehouse areas. But it was definitely, partially thanks to these cargo stands and the ability to have airports import the goods, airplanes, doing that instead of ships. But honestly, I think it was more about having the commercial goods warehouses here. I think that was the number one thing that fixed the issue. So real quick, before this episode's over, I'm going to pop in game and just show you guys exactly the difference it made compared to the very beginning of the episode. So here we are back in the game, just kind of an overview of the city, and check this out. It's like still sort of here. There's a couple little complaints here and there of the commercial buildings needing goods to sell, but it's way less than before. Just like all over. There's a couple here and there, but before it was every single building. Obviously I have sort of a death problem going on in some places that I will have to eventually fix, but things are going pretty well in terms of this issue. You can see, like, compared to before, there's a good amount more cars. I mean, especially compared to the earlier episodes in the series. I remember in those episodes, there were practically no cars on these roads. Over here, there's starting to be like a ton. And this intersection over here by the harbor is really probably the busiest intersection on the island. Sometimes there's like traffic backed all the way up because of this merging area right here under this shed tunnel where it goes from 2 lanes to 1 lane. So this is actually one of my favorite things. I just love this shed tunnel right here. This view right here is so awesome. So yeah, I mean, the traffic on the island is pretty good at this point. The harbor is not nearly as clogged up as it used to be, especially because of these 2 little roads that I put, one right here between these 3 big tanks that really helps alleviate traffic in the oil area, and then another road that goes right here through this red building, and it's kind of hidden and it goes inside there, and those really helped alleviate the ore and the oil areas. And the shipping has gone down a ton too because of how much of the shipping is now happening at the airport. So things are looking good. Things are looking a lot more normal, a little bit more like a normal City Skylines game. Wow, this is some bad traffic going to the airport. Jeez, something's going on here. I have to look at that after this. Anyways, that's it for me for this episode. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. After the cinematics, there's going to be a little bonus material if you are interested, but please feel free not to watch it. It's not amazing. But yeah, that's about it. See you next time.